All right. Welcome, everyone. It is about 11 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started with today's Wednesday webinar. I am Emily Falapino with the Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce, and we are so excited that you're joining us today. Today's webinar is dedicated to a subject I hope that most of us are familiar with, the subject of networking. But we're going to take things up a notch and talk about networking 2.0 in the digital age, or really in the COVID era. So I want to give you all a warm welcome and share with you that today's webinar presentation is actually going to be a little different. While we don't have a formal presentation, you are going to see that we have some panelists who in my mind are standout experts in the topic of networking. So today I welcome Jonathan Montanez with Polito Cleaning and Restoration. We have Miss Jillian Larson with Reality Rally. We have Mr. Tom Summers with Stonehouse Insurance. And we have Barbie Ray of Barbie Ray Designs. And what I want to point out to our audience, I'm sure many of these panelists are familiar to you, if not all of them are familiar to you. But you'll notice they come from and represent every different type of industry. They all have different demographic backgrounds. And I love that. It's so pertinent to our conversation today because networking is more than just a one size fits all. There are digital tools and strategies and fundamentals that do apply across all of these different industries and sectors. And the last thing that we want is for you to feel like the presenter is speaking too narrowly. I think here you're going to be able to identify with and relate to one of these panelists. So we are so excited to have them join us. The way that today will work is we're going to share a really quick presentation, and then I'm going to moderate some discussion between our panelists, asking them questions about their experiences and insights and suggestions with networking in a COVID era. And then we're going to turn the Q&A over to the audience. So I want you to be thinking through questions. You can use the chat box, or you can use the Q&A field to get those questions to us, and then we'll make sure to take those live. Right before we get started, and in this moment, I want to invite all of our participants, if you'd like to use the chat box, go ahead and leave your name, your email, and the business that you're representing. We will circulate a list for your practical networking exercise after this event, but please go ahead and take a moment to fill in the chat box now. All right, and as you guys are doing that, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Beautiful. So all of you should be able to see my screen. I encourage you to keep typing away in the chat box. I'm just going to give us a quick intro that's going to liaison us over into the moderated discussion. So networking in the digital age. Here's the biggest, I think the biggest takeaway that I have for you as our audience and for our chamber members. I don't want you to feel like you're powerless through this time and trial that we're going through with the COVID-19. We're all isolated, we're physically distanced, and we're not able to attend networking events. And for many of us, that is just jarring, and we almost forget how to function and how to do business because we're so used to doing it a certain way. So our hope is that you would feel empowered and resourced and equipped with new ways and opportunities and tools to move forward and to keep your business growing and your network growing despite what's happening around us. So today we're going to touch on networking. What is it and why we do it in a very short version. Again, this is more of a 2.0 presentation on digital networking. We're also going to talk about new ways to network in a digital era. We'll talk about specific digital networking tools and how to network without ever leaving your home, and virtual cold calling. Yes, it's a real thing and you don't need to be afraid of it. So as we get started, I want to share this quote from Keith Ferrazzi. He's a great author and has a lot of great business insights. He says, "The currency of real networking is not greed, but generosity." And I hope that all of you can stop and take a moment to think about it, because when you're thinking about the word networking, generosity doesn't necessarily come to top of mind, but it should, because you will find that as you network, networking is about building relationships. And the fastest way to building a relationship with someone is offering something to that person and to that relationship. So always approach your networking with a spirit of generosity and a willingness to share or add value to somebody else. When you do that, you'll find that people tend to reciprocate. Once you give them value, they want to give you value in return. They feel a lot more confident and comfortable with your intentions. So let's move on from that into what and why of networking. Networking is an action. It is one of those things, if you consider yourself more introverted, or maybe you're new to business or sales or marketing and networking in general, it is going to require effort. It requires initiative. It is an action and an activity that you do. Be aware that as you network and how you choose to network builds your brand, because every time you interact with someone, you're making an impression on someone. And understand that the way in which you approach someone gives them an impression of your brand and how you do business. So I'll say, in my very early years of networking and attending, mixers for the first time, I was probably, one of the most awkward people in the room. And I was so focused on the act of having to network and make a connection that I approached it completely wrong. And I know I'm not the only one that's done that in their journey, but it was almost like I was on a mission and everyone in the room was a target. And I approached them very clumsily and was only transactional and tried to push my business down their throat and get a business card back from them. And the results of that weren't so great. But over time, as I learned to just have conversation with people, ask questions about them and their business and what they do, and then relate my experiences to theirs and just have organic conversation, I found that I more effectively networked because people felt like it wasn't this transaction I was trying to force, I was relationship building with them. And I have a very strong network now because it's relationship based. And I would much rather be known for being relational based than transactional based. So just keep in mind that to build relationships, it takes an investment in the person, and that when you make it an intentional effort to invest in people and get to know them, it creates an impression that they remember and that they're also more likely to refer. So as we talk about the old
Either she's a really good mime or I think she froze.
It's thinking the same thing.
Yeah, darn it, Emily.
All right, take it away, Jonathan.
Barbie, you're so much better at this. I'm already sweaty and I don't know what to do.
Well, it seems like, I presume Emily knows that she's frozen.
Yeah,
we told her. I mean, the chat is so. What she's showing right now is so what we're going to talk about. As so many of my notes are exactly what she's just outlined, and I'm sure of us nodding our heads. So it's so true. It's all about relations. If you don't build those relationships, and this is how I've got to know all of you. So I'm looking forward to seeing that PowerPoint that she's doing to follow up, because I was already making a few notes. So
that's fantastic. I didn't know we were supposed to make notes to prepare for this. That's great. You know what? That's very, very true. Jillian and I met recently, and honestly, I did my own research to find out what Jillian did, because we didn't sit there and talk about what she did, and it's kind of vague reality rally. you know, but I was curious. And so I looked, and that's exactly what you want to do. We're not there to talk about ourselves necessarily. It's 100% relationship building. And that's how people trust you and want to do business with you. Right, Tom? You're muted, Tom.
Yes, we're muted.
There we go. From what Emily said, what resonated the most with me is that networking is really about being generous and trying to help the other people in the room. And my experience was similar to Emily's. I don't think I started out with that attitude. Are we okay? Yeah. I don't think that's the way I started, but as I did more and more networking through the chamber, I came to understand that it was so much better to focus on the other people and not on myself. And one great thing about the chamber is that I've always found that it's very easy for me to sell the Temecula Chamber. It's very positive. Here's Emily.
There she is.
Welcome back,
guys.
But I was just saying that, Emily, what resonated from me from what you said was being generous and focusing on the other people when you're in a networking setting. And I've always found it very easy and very productive to sell the Temecula Chamber of Commerce rather than myself or my own business or any particular product or idea. I offer to get people better plugged into the chamber, and that's an offer that's almost always accepted. So it's easy to make because you always get a positive response. And that's been kind of the core of my networking activities over the years in Temecula.
Well, thanks for filling in for me, Tom. And you actually give us a great segue, because I was in the middle of a rant and really was getting ready to transition over anyways. So let's talk about some of these fundamentals. And Tom, I'm going to direct a question to you, because you come from an industry that is very dependent on your lead generation. You work in life insurance as your specialty, and you are constantly looking for new clientele. And I think your industry has always been known as, there are certainly sales guys who need to generate leads. And you have had the great fortune of networking with people in person. Give us some insights about what you've learned in your professional journey about what makes networking successful. And in the COVID environment like we're in right now, how are you still thriving and growing your network despite not meeting people in person?
Thank you, Emily. As I said, I found the best approach is to focus on the other person rather than on myself, and on selling the chamber rather than on selling my particular service or my particular product, and just offering to help that person be better connected to the chamber, which after all is an organization that they've already elected to become involved in if we're meeting in some kind of a chamber setting. And I have used the chamber also as a jumping off point to other organizations, because in meeting people at the chamber, we meet people from the city of Temecula, we meet people from other companies, obviously other industries, and I'm always asking about what other people are doing for networking and where they're going and where they're making connections. And that's helped me to build my involvement in other organizations as well. So it provides more in-person networking settings. The challenge, of course, during COVID-19 is that, like a lot of you, I'm working 90% from home. I rarely go out to my own office. I rarely go out to visit with, I really have not been visiting with clients in person. And so the challenge has been to, how to meet more people. So we've emphasized social media more. I've just started to get on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm not a social media being normally, but I found it necessary during this time. And kind of as a basis for that, we're building out our Stonehouse website and my financial page on Stonehouse, and I'm writing a blog, And I'm also doing workshops, and we're trying to generate that content and then circulate that content across these different media platforms. And the workshops in particular are a way of meeting more people. So we're just learning how to do it. And I'm trying to learn how to circulate all that content and how to follow up on it effectively to get meetings with new people. So it's not automatic and it's not easy, but it is possible to continue growing business during this time.
Tom, you make some excellent points there, and Jonathan, I'll segue to you in a second, but I
just want to add something real quick, just as a testimonial, because Tom is, I want to hammer that home because that is genuinely who he is. I had a private conversation with a very good friend that we all know, Mr. Seedy, and he talked about Tom in a way that he's like, I've known this guy for a year. No idea what exactly he did. I knew where he worked. I kind of knew what he did, but just we're friends. And now he's got a lifelong client in Sebastian because of the way Tom approaches his networking. So I just want to say that he's 100% truthful to what he's saying right now. So,
Jonathan, thank you. Also, I just want to say really quickly that Sebastian and Jonathan have run another networking organization, and I learned about that from the Temecula Chamber of Commerce. That's where I met you guys, and that's been one of my favorite networking venues when we could meet in person. In fact, I think it's the last one I attended before COVID-19, and I hope to come back to it. But that's just a really good example. I wouldn't have known about what Sebastian and Jonathan were doing if it hadn't been for networking at the Temecula Chamber. So the Temecula Chamber for me has been kind of the bedrock, the basis for all of my networking activity. And it still is. With the Chamber has transitioned to Zoom, and I really appreciate that. That was kind of a seamless transition on your part, Emily, to move all these activities to Zoom. And so really we've continued doing a lot of the same things that we always did. It's just that we needed to figure out how to do them electronically rather than through hugs and handshakes.
Yeah, really great point. And I'm going to segue a question over to Barbie, but to kind of wrap up some of the nuggets of wisdom you shared there, Tom, I hope as an audience, you all hear that moving over to networking in the digital age is not comfortable. And as Tom shared, he doesn't have it all figured out, but he's making the effort to get on Instagram, to start blogging, to make sure that he has a digital presence on his website. These are things that for, I think, many years, a lot of us said, yeah, that's for somebody else to do. And you can approach lots of things in your business that way, and it will get you only so far. But I really want to encourage and applaud all of you who take the time and the effort.
Oh dear, froze again.
Oh,
So, so looking at that though, this is one of the problems I think that people face. They think, oh my gosh, what happens if I screw it up? What happens if I freeze? What do I do if the projector doesn't work? And that's the thing, is that we all have to learn how to bounce into something different because these things will happen. And it's no use saying, well, I can't do that because I don't know how. I can't do that because I'm scared. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know what Emily's probably scrambling behind there. I don't know where she is, but I think that's so important that people learn to pivot. And that is one of the points that I was going to bring up, is the having to pivot when things aren't the same, which is what we're doing right now with COVID. And I'm personally seeing and hearing from people that are saying, oh, but it isn't like it used to be. Well, I mean, yes, it isn't. But this is a forced isn't how it used to be. And I am loving that book, Who Moved My Cheese? Because that is exactly what's happening right now, is why stick around waiting for your cheese to come back? It's not going to. So get scurrying off, go find where the good cheese is that will be beneficial to you and others, and learn how to pivot. If something doesn't go quite right, what do? Are you caught short-handed and don't know what to do? So, yeah, that's Emily, we're talking about what to do when your media doesn't work right.
I know this is a struggle that all of you relate to.
This is real life. This is what's happening. Okay?
This is life in action.
Jillian, that's a great point. And it's just like, step back and everybody, 30 participants, us panel, none of us got where we are by giving up. Yes, this is a change. Get used to it. Go find that cheese, like you said.
That's right, because when you fail, right, it's for your first attempt in learning. So keep that in mind.
So Barbie, you might have beat me to my question, but you have been putting together some great webinars and educational seminars related to social media. Help the audience understand how they can leverage social media to find new contacts. How you can use hashtags or search queries in Instagram or TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. What do you recommend?
Yeah, sure. So, well, social media definitely is a great platform for our current environment, right? For how we're dealing with business. It's a way to connect with one another and build those relationships. So depending on what your goals are, who you're looking to connect with, the platform will vary. But I definitely find it's great to not just, be on social media, but to actually be social in itself. So for example, for myself, I always have a daily goal to interact and engage with at least 3 accounts of who is my ideal client or those that I really want to connect with. And it's not just liking their posts, and not just saying, oh, that looks awesome, but responding in such a way that it also gives them a way to engage back. So whether it's say, hey, that's awesome, how did you do that? Or always leave a question so then you can start a conversation. And I find for me, Instagram is kind of my main platform. I also use Facebook, but being a graphic designer and branding, I find the visual platform works best for me and making those connections. But I would definitely utilize, people want to know more about you behind the brand, because people buy from people. They don't just buy a product, they don't just buy a service. They want to know who's the person behind it. You want to humanize your brand. So whether that is, sharing people in your stories, they want to see the real authentic you, and you want to make sure that whatever your brand is, whoever you're representing, that is out there across the board and you have that consistency.
I love that. That's so great. I appreciate you sharing that goal and tip of yours to connect with 3 different accounts, thinking about who your intended audience is. That is a takeaway for all of us here today. Out of curiosity, Barbie, how do you search for that person? And would you give us an even more detailed or practical example of how you would engage with them? Are you DMing them? Are you leaving a comment that is open-ended? How does that work?
Sure. Well, so first off, I always you need to identify who is your ideal client. And what I've shared with my audience and friends and other colleagues too is that you need to identify that ideal client, and you do that 3 ways by creating an ideal client profile. So 1, you start with the basics. So that is like their name, their age, and their gender. Make them as real as possible. 2nd is the details. So you want to fill in the details, like where do they live? What do they do for work? Are they married? Do they have kids? What do they like to do on the weekends? And then thirdly is like their social habits. What platforms do they like to use? What content would they like to see? Who else do they follow? So once you're able to identify who that ideal client is, then I would kind of go to, like, for example, the accounts that they might follow, and kind of search through the comments, search through the posts, and kind of, you do a little research, kind of go into the profiles and be like, this kind of matches who I think is my ideal client. And then you would either reply to their accounts onto their post, or maybe they might put a comment on somebody else's post and you kind of maybe agree with them or start engaging in conversation. And then I would definitely take it to private message or to their DMs, because that's a great way. If you can get somebody into the private message or to your direct messages, you got direct access to them versus just having it on a post, and you can naturally start having a conversation. And you'll be surprised at how many people don't really use DMs as much. They might think it's a little scary, whatever, but I say if you put something on your story and somebody replies with just an emoji, reply back with a simple thank you, I appreciate that, or again, engage with a question so you can start the conversation.
That is all priceless information. And I'm going to give a shameless tip to all of you who are watching. If you don't feel comfortable tomorrow doing what Barbie just said, use the Temecula Valley Chamber's social media accounts because you're probably all connected with us. Look at who we're promoting or posting about. Maybe it's a new business, and you could reach out to them and say, hey, I am also a member of the Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce. We have that in common. Here's how long I've been around. I don't know much about your business, or I'm just learning of you for the first time, right? And that's just a natural way to start a conversation through our accounts, if that makes it easier for all of you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Jillian, I want to ask you a question. When we talk about really just starting to meet people and identify, kind of go through the mechanics of that process, you have a really unique story. And I don't know that everyone understands this, but you started Reality Rally, which is a huge fundraising platform. It's a multi-day event that's turned into a huge, iconic event in the Temecula Valley. And you got all these celebrities to come to Temecula for multiple days and raise funds for Michelle's Place. I know that you didn't have direct access to all of those celebrities. You weren't in front of them. Help us understand what the journey was for you in identifying who you needed to network with and how you reached out to them and made your business kind of find its wings.
Well, thank you for asking that. And yes, it's actually a very, very long answer because Reality Rally, as you said, is a 3-day event. I'm not a business. I'm just in the business of creating fun opportunities and connecting and working with groups of people in order to incorporate everyone who wants to be incorporated into those 3 days of fun with the entire purpose of raising money for Michelle's Place. I could never do this as a business for myself. It's just far too much work. So that's the first thing, is it's not just a reality star group. It's everybody. And Barbie mentioned, you know, identify your demographics or your target audience. Well, in our case, it's everybody. So the first thing I had to do was develop who and what. For those that don't know, I was on the TV show Survivor, and I became one of them. So that gave me the in to be able to connect with people. Just like instead of saying I belong to the chamber, I'd love to know about you, I can say I'm Jillian from Survivor Gabon, blah, blah. So then I'm one of them. It gives me so much leverage, just like saying a member of the chamber gives everybody leverage. This gave me. So I had moved 18 times, and this was my 18th move to Temecula, and I knew nobody. I had moved a few years before I was on Survivor, but I had been so busy trying to get on Survivor, I hadn't really done any community connections. So I get on Survivor and I have this brilliant, what I thought was a brilliant and fun idea when I was in the jungle, and came back to Temecula knowing nobody really. And so my first tip was for myself. Now I'm talking to myself, but I'm also talking to everybody. The first thing is I had to get out of my comfort zone. Now, believe it or not, I'm actually very shy. I'm not introverted. I'm basically shy, and I make myself do what I do by getting out of my comfort zone. So if you're in your comfort zone and you're not doing what you need to do, that's the problem. So I now knew I had to connect with reality stars. I had to connect with community. I wanted to connect with all of the surrounding cities, which has now happened. I had to connect with people to see who wanted to help. There was no way this could happen by itself. But the entire purpose was for Michelle's Place. So I have done virtual reach out since the beginning. And I started working on this in 2009, 2010, and we launched in 2011. And getting out of the comfort zone, the first thing I did was I thought I wanted to know people, I wanted to know the city council. So I took an invitation to the city hall and invited the city council, who I did not know, and I felt absolutely ridiculous doing this, but I made myself do it to invite them to watch the premiere of Survivor when I knew I was going to be booted. And Chuck Washington came, and that's who I spoke to about Temecula, and it went on from then. What I did was I cruised all the social, and I didn't know much about social media. I hadn't learned it yet. So I knew I had to learn. So that's the other thing, is get out of your comfort zone and learn what you need to know. So I cruised Facebook, and I still do every day. I cruised Facebook looking for people to connect with. Were they a reality star person? Had they been on a TV show? Were they local? Did they own a restaurant? Did they own a business that might want to be part of what we do? So constantly I was doing that. But the bottom line is, you've got to learn, you've got to get out of your comfort zone. And yes, I connected with hundreds and hundreds of people. For the reality star component, it was because I was on Survivor. So I was one of them. What I then did for the community was I developed my personality, I had the same personality, but I developed the brand, my personal brand, to get known in the community, which is what I've done through networking. Networking is absolutely no different on social media than it was in person. It's actually easier. You don't have the driving time. You can wear whatever you want to from the waist up and the rest doesn't matter. You don't have to spend money on the meals. You are saving gas money. It's all exactly the same. You have to develop relationships. You have to build your brand. You have to be honest, reliable, forthcoming, get out of your comfort zone, learn something, learn what to do if your Zoom freezes, learn what to do, how to do everything you need to do. So I, over the years, have basically connected with over 800 reality TV stars from about 40, 50 different TV shows, but they have to raise money for Michelle's Place to be here. So I have to keep connecting all the most recent shows. I have to look for the people. Facebook is an amazing stalker. I can stalk every day, and I stalk for, and that's really a negative word, but I go and look to build relationships. I notice somebody's mother died. I'll send them an email or a card or something. All of that we can do to develop via virtual now. It's so much easier. You do all of these things, build your relationship, build your network, build your brand, build your reliability, get on everything you possibly can network-wise. And like I said, it's so much easier, but do your research. Find out who's what and who's where. And it's always, always what's in it for them, not what's in it for you. And that's the bottom line. And in my case, it's twofold. It's what's in it for Michelle's Place and what's in it for the person I'm talking to. Do they want to be part of what we do in order to help them, not us? Because I have enormous fishing pond. So if somebody isn't interested in being part of what we do, that's okay, because it isn't something everybody's interested in. But if they are, why would I not offer it to them to help their business grow through our medium? And our platform is global. I mean, we raise money, and one year we raised it from 14 countries through the reality star component. And so that's what I've done, is I've learned social media and then used it and still learn it and still do it. But the bottom line is getting out of your comfort zone. And now it's moving into another room to find the cheese that's out there waiting for people. So that's sort of it. And sorry, that wasn't a nutshell.
Oh my gosh, bravo, Jillian. I always appreciate everything that you have to share. And I think there were so many relatable and tangible aspects of what you just shared with the audience. While I don't condone stalking, I will say I certainly condone you guys getting out into Facebook, browsing perhaps, and connecting there. And Jillian, you said something that kind of segues into a question that I have for Jonathan. So Jonathan, you network at, I think, at least 3 chambers of commerce. You're part of BNI. You're a co-host for the Neighbors Monthly Mixer. You spend a whole lot of time networking with people. So I can only imagine the number of leads and business cards and people that you've met. What tips do you have for following up after you've met someone? And do you use any digital tools to do that?
So, yes, I was blessed with a outgoing personality and a fun personality. And I don't have a problem admitting that. And I think that the key component to doing any networking, because it's not for everybody, or it would seem, because not everybody is extroverted and wants to get out. And I mean, it's no secret that I'm a bit of a goofball or class clown, but you don't have to be. You just need to be passionate about what you're promoting, what you're doing. And like every panelist on here has talked about, is it's not about you, it's about everybody else. And it's about being a good human being. I don't think there's anybody that I've met through the chamber or any of my networking that I can say, you know what, that's a terrible human being. I hope never to see them again. Like it's literally, like Tom was saying, generosity, you know, what you brought up. And so with that mentality that, hey, I'm here to promote and to help other people grow. That's my key component. You know, we do this mixer. We're not making money off of it. You know, it's not a business that we started. It's strictly just because we want to have fun. We want to see people grow. So following up with people, yeah, you're right. I have a ridiculous amount of business cards. Matter of fact, people in my office get so frustrated seeing how this stacks and stacks. They just keep growing, you know. So following up, I think the best way, because people need human interaction. Emails, that's not, I think the best way is if you have time, make a phone call. Nobody picks up the phone hardly anymore. People are texting, they're emailing, they're Facebooking. You pick up the phone and just have a casual conversation. Hey, you know, I met you, really interested in what you had to say, or, you know what, I think I know somebody that could benefit from what you do, but I want to learn a little bit more about what you do. So that way I don't lead you on something that's going to waste your time. And that way, now I know for future that I got a guy, or I don't have a guy for that, you know, but you don't want to waste anybody's time. So let me get to know you a little bit better, what you do. And then, and in that, in turn, then introduces them to me as an individual. And, yeah, Jonathan's pretty cool. I don't know what the heck he does. I don't know what restoration is, but that guy's all right, you know, and I appreciate him. And that's like everybody else was touching on, Jillian, you know, and Barbie, interacting with people on social media is huge. People want recognition, like Barbie was talking about. Leaving a comment, hey, that was really cool. How did you do that? You know, those simple little things, it's like, wow, somebody cares, you know? So social media is another great way to follow up with people. You add them as a friend. People are trying to grow their networking group. If they're at a networking event, they're trying to grow their networking field, or as Jillian said, their lake, their pond. So social media is a fantastic way to do that, because you can interact like that, you know, like Jillian said, no drive time, no handshaking, no caught in a conversation. You know, you show interest, you give recognition to people, and that makes people feel good. And it all goes back to just being a good human being, supporting each other and helping each other grow.
Excellent. And I appreciate you touching on one of the classic and timeless practices of just picking up the phone. And I think what I'm hearing you say there again is just make sure it's relational. Don't just be transactional in your networking. You're not in a quest to collect the most business cards. You're on a quest to do something with those contacts, which again requires more effort. And this is why, you know, it's work. I also want to just take a moment, and then I'm going to have a question for Barbie, but I want to point out that, you know, not every single person you meet is going to end up being your customer, but there is a really strong likelihood that they know someone who could be your customer. And if you take the time to build a relationship and have them be comfortable with you, you're going to be the guy that they refer when their friend needs your services. So don't discount people and think, well, they're not going to be my client, so I'm not going to take the time. I think that's a big mistake, and I see people do it quite frequently.
Oh,
Barbie, I have a quick question for you in regards to the style and the way in which people network. You're online a lot. You're also at events. I see you around when we're able to host them. What different types of networking styles do you see? Do you think that there are pros and cons to different approaches? And what should we all be considerate of as we are attempting to network digitally?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. There are different styles. And I think, like most of the panelists have already touched on here, I think the good part is to always make it personal, right? You want to make that connection and approach the person as a human being. Again, finding that common interest to start building the rapport about it. And again, it's all about what you know, you can do for them. And be curious. I think that's the biggest thing about networking, is to be curious and ask the questions, and really be intrigued about who it is that you're speaking to, right? And then I guess if we're kind of thinking about like the good, bad, and ugly, right? There's always the bad approach in regards to digital like networking. You know, if you're using a social media, what I find is a slight put off is when I just get a cold friend request or a connection on LinkedIn with no note, no message associated with it. And you're kind of left wondering, well, why do they want to connect with me? How do I know them? I'd like to know a little bit more. So I think that's not necessarily a great approach to use. And I would recommend, if you're looking to make a connection with somebody on LinkedIn, on Facebook, I always recommend add a note in there, follow up with a private message and the reason why you want to connect. You know, why is there maybe that relationship is mutually beneficial. And of course, like the ugly side of things is just don't go in right away and trying to sell yourself or sell your product or anything like that. And again, it just really comes down to being personable and making a true connection and, you know, being human.
Yeah, I think that the golden rule applies here, right? Yeah. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. I mean, we've all been probably in a situation where someone has approached us and we haven't appreciated the style. Maybe it felt forced or like too much too soon. Be cognizant to not be that person. And the tips that you all have given, just being genuine, being curious about people, asking questions about them, that's a sure recipe for success. Barbie, I have another question for you, just related to some social media platforms. So some of the popular ones we know of would be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm seeing businesses use TikTok more and more, which blows my mind, and it's so creative. If you use multiple of these social media accounts, do you brand yourself, or is your tone and style different from one to the next?
I would say no. I think really you got to be consistent with your brand, right? Because remember, you are a representative of your company and who your brand is. And so you want to make sure that aligns with your values and whatever you put out there, your messaging and how you're connecting with people. So for example, say your brand, you're considered caring, personable, and thoughtful. Well, your approach shouldn't be loud, wild, and aggressive, right? It just doesn't work. It just doesn't align. And you're not going to get the right response. You're not going to connect with the right people that way. So no matter what you do, it's all about brand consistency, regardless of your, you know, whatever platform you're using.
All right, well, we've got just a couple more minutes before I want to open it up to Q&A. So to our audience, I'm going to say, please use the Q&A box. If you have questions that you'd like to ask of any of our panelists, you can direct a question specifically to someone, or you can just direct a question and one of us will respond to it. In the meantime, though, I want to ask, you know, each of you just a quick, you know, one minute response at most. What advice would you have, you know, maybe that you haven't already shared with, you know, the new business owner or the working professional who's tuning in right now? What great idea or simple truth do you want them to walk away with? Tom, we'll start with you.
As we were talking about networking and the new environment and COVID and Zoom and all of that, and how to go and how to approach networking, I was thinking about the Networking 101 course that the Temecula Chamber puts on. And I know at one time I think it was Networking 101 and Networking 201 or something like that, 2 different levels. But I was struck the first time I went to that session. Jackie Steed often taught it, and some other fellow ambassadors and chamber members. But I was struck by how all of us experience the same kinds of anxieties when we first get into a networking environment. And I thought that simple networking course was great in putting people at their ease, you know, once they realize that all of us feel the same going into that environment, have some of the same anxieties. This course would give you some simple tools to deal with it. And you immediately, just after walking out of that course without, you know, you've only become an hour older and, you know, you haven't gained any networking experience per se, but you already knew what to do when you walk in the room, and you already understood that you're not the only one who feels some anxiety. And I think that's really important. And I think it applies just as much now during COVID as we network on Zoom and other platforms electronically. I think it's good to remember that none of us is totally familiar with this environment. It's new for everybody. It's causing anxiety for everybody. And if you kind of focus on putting other people at ease, it makes it a lot easier to walk into the room, even if it's on your computer screen on Zoom.
Really great pointers. And thank you for mentioning the Power Networking Workshop that the Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce hosts. I'll tell you, I still sit in on that event from time to time, and there isn't an instance in which I don't walk away feeling like I just have a new idea, I have a new thought and perspective on how to up my own networking game and the value and the power of it. It gets very practical into the nitty gritty. I see someone posed a question about, hey, can we discuss, how and when to use business cards? The Power Networking Workshop will address all of that with multiple scenarios, and they even do role playing as an example. So we'll get you guys a follow-up resource to tune into that. Jonathan, let me pose the same question to you. The 1 minute spiel on, what nugget of wisdom do you want this audience to have as a practical takeaway?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick here. So kind of circling back to personality, I was invited to a really cool networking group yesterday evening. And so I saw this really neat educational video that basically pointed at what makes you different or what makes you special. And analyzing that for yourself is going to help you project that so much more. So if you're not an extroverted person, you don't want to be that one that stands out that much, but you want to make money, you want to have a successful business, that's okay. Understand that. Like Jillian says, you have to step out of your comfort zone. We all had to. I don't know how many times the mixers that I went to, I pulled up in the parking lot and said, you know what? They won't notice if I'm not there. I'm going to pull back out of here. But I said, no, I'm dragging myself in there because that's the whole point of me being here. I need to grow this brand. But you're special in your right. You own a business, you work, like for me, I don't own Polito. I just am the business development community liaison gentleman. So, my job, or for any of you others out there, educate people. There's a reason why you are the expert in your industry, in your business. So go out there and educate. Don't sell. Like Barbie said, people want to do business with people. They don't want to be sold to, so have that confidence and be involved. Step out of your comfort zone. When you're invited to a networking group, you're not committing to anything more than, like Tom said, an hour and a half older, but now you've exposed yourself to how many more people and how many more people appreciate, respect you, and know you. So get out there, support other people, and give that recognition. I'm sorry, I have too many notes on many pages here. And just always keep a positive attitude. And my last little nugget is, since we are on Zoom, and as Jillian said, we're not going anywhere with this thing. You want to have a good presence. You want to be received well. Like I said, positive attitude, smile. And if you don't think, or you're not sure what kind of attitude you're portraying, take your phone, prop it up against your deal, hit record, and do your presentation as if you were in a networking group, and watch it and see your facial expressions, your mannerisms, and find out, what? God, I don't look very approachable at all. That was terrible. Work on it. Just like being in front of the mirror and whatnot, but at least on a recorded screen, you can see what everybody else is seeing. So that's my little tidbit. I hope that helps.
That was an excellent tidbit. I'm so glad you threw that in there, Jonathan. Thank you. So Jillian, I'll pose the same question to you. What last nugget of wisdom do you want to leave with the audience about networking?
Well, basically, again, it's absolutely getting out of your comfort zone and stepping out of the box. I personally don't have a box. I don't think inside or out. I just am no box. So don't have a box. Don't box yourself in. You don't want to restrict yourself from something because you're not sure or you don't know. So first of all, avoid all negatives, because the negatives are going to impact people in so many ways. And the biggest one to avoid is your own negative. You've got to stop talking to yourself negatively and telling you what you can't do. Sorry, I always get caught up and get so excited with what I'm thinking. So avoid the negative in your own head. Don't talk yourself out of things. Talk yourself into things, and don't be a cheater. And the reason I say cheater is, why would you cheat somebody of knowing what you do in case they want it, need it, have to have it, or need to know about what you do in order to tell somebody who desperately needed what you do? So why would you be a cheater? So get out of your comfort zone. Don't live in a box. Open your mind up, because you never know when a serendipitous occasion is going to happen, because that's why it's serendipitous. Just get out there, meet with people, be valuable, think out of your box, avoid the negative, and just do it.
Jillian, you're always a tough act to follow, but Barbie, I know that that you can handle it. Go ahead and share with the audience your final words and best tips that you'd want them to walk away with today.
Sure. I would pretty much mirror what everybody else said here on the panel. It comes down to being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? That's the only way we grow. That's the only way you guys can experience change. And you don't have to worry about getting everything exactly right the first time around, or even the third, fifth time around. Because for me, I have a personal mantra of progress over perfection, right? It's all about just taking that one step at a time, and you kind of look, you analyze, and keep moving forward. That's the main thing. Just keep moving forward. Say yes. It's okay to say yes, and if you fail, that's okay too. Because what's the worst that's going to happen? You're not going to die. I don't think networking has killed anybody as of yet. So be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
I love that. I think everyone participating today needed to hear that. So we do have a question that's come in, and it's relative to a business that maybe tries to create engagement through giveaways. And so their question is, giveaways, how do we feel about them? Are they corny? Are they spammy? And how would you approach that on social media? Do any of you have any strong reactions or experience in facilitating something like this?
I don't really have much to give away when it comes to water damage restoration, but the advice that I could give, because I see it all constantly, on Merchant Mondays and all that, is when you do pick your winner, post about it, because so many people are like, I wonder if anybody ever wins that. It's nobody ever knows. And it goes back to that recognition, like, hey, check out our winner, congratulations, she won or he won this. Just you have to put it out there and say, hey, that way people know, like, oh wow, people do, these people are active. But I don't know, Barbie, what do you give away?
Yeah. Well, no, I want to just tie on to what Jonathan said, that, definitely make it as real as possible and let people know that this is for real. Post the whole process behind it, maybe taking photos and pictures of behind the scenes of what it is they're actually receiving, maybe testimonies of people that have experienced this product or service and how it'll benefit the winner. And then also, I think when it comes to giveaways, I think it's powerful to partner with other businesses when you do a giveaway. So not just focus on yourselves, but find those other power partners that can come together, because it's a great way for each of the businesses to leverage each other's audience, and you get a lot more eyes on your account, more on your business, and I think it draws more value for those that want to participate.
Yeah, it's like everybody's tried playing the Monopoly game at McDonald's, but does anybody ever win that $1 million? I don't think they do.
Yeah, there was a whole Netflix documentary on that. I will say, just on the heels of what you shared, Barbie, we have some members who do an exceptional job of collaborating together. And one of the practices I've seen is that, maybe 3 or 4 businesses will get together and they'll decide together to offer a giveaway. And they might say to win a product from each of our businesses, which has a huge and appealing value, you just have to follow each of our accounts on social media or give us a referral or whatever their ask is. But there's a lot of power in that, because now you're leveraging the products and services and the value of another business, and you all are reaching each other's respective audiences. So it's an excellent way to generate leads. I would just say if you're gonna host a giveaway, do everything well with quality, and then like Jonathan said, make sure you continue talking about it after the giveaway is done. Harness that residual value for yourself, definitely. All right, audience, we have the last call for final questions. I haven't seen anything else come in to chat. So I'm gonna go back to this Q&A question for our panelists. The question specifically is, would someone please address the procedure for handing out business cards and flyers at face-to-face networking events? And Tom, I'm actually gonna turn to you first, because you represent our ambassadors. You're at just about every event. I'm sure that you've seen all different types of approaches. What do you think is important for us to know etiquette-wise?
Well, I would say, first of all, I think something that all of us in the chamber and in our networking community agree about is it's not usually a good strategy for most businesses to go into a networking setting and just start handing out cards. I think you pretty quickly realize that doesn't generate a lot of goodwill, or people will very rarely call you after just getting your business card if there hasn't been a conversation. And I always wait for somebody to ask me for my business card if they really do want to reach out to me. And that only happens after some significant conversation, even in the networking setting. And so I think that from a business card perspective, rather than handing out my card, which I really do not focus on at all, I try to obtain business cards from people that I know I want to follow up with later on. And that kind of goes along with our networking protocol of not being a salesperson in the networking meeting, just introducing yourself, introducing the other people in the room to others in the room, making connections, and setting up the opportunity to follow up and have a business conversation, perhaps offline, if that's appropriate. And to that end, sometimes just, we all work better if we have set a goal for ourselves. And if I'm going to one of our larger networking events with, say 40 or 50 people, or coffee, or the morning mixer that we used to do and probably will again do at BJ's Brewhouse, I always say, well, I'd like to come away with 5 cards from people who are new to me that I just want to follow up and have a conversation, welcome them to the chamber, and see if there's any way that I can help them in the community. I wouldn't at that point start selling to anybody either, but just keep building the relationship, and eventually things will come back around, and you'll be creating opportunities for yourself, although you don't really know how that's going to transpire. You don't really know how that's going to happen. But I would say, don't give out your business card, maybe get somebody else's business card, and then offer them something of value.
That's excellent advice. And I'll say, I've observed lots of different approaches and tactics here. And I think there's a lot of value and credence to what you just shared, Tom. Your business cards, they have value for 2 reasons. A, it literally cost money to print, but B, there's a figurative value too. And you want to make sure that whoever is on the receiving end realizes that that's a value. A connection with you is a value. So focus first on creating the value, and then offer a card. Would you like a card? Would you like to stay in touch? Would you like a flyer? Hey, we're hosting an event. Would you mind helping me promote it if I gave you this? But don't say it in a way that forces an awkward expectation on someone, because that's really not going to be productive for either of you. And something you said, Tom, that I think could translate to social media is, you might not, again, be the end customer, but you, Tom, do such a great job of constantly introducing people to one another. So if you don't know how to start a conversation with someone, or why you would reach out to someone specifically, maybe you reach out to just introduce them to someone that might be of interest to them. Hey, I've noticed you on the chamber page, or I've heard your name before and I see your business. You know, I don't know that I have anything of value to you, but have you met this person? Here's their contact information. And that's like a strong 2-for-1, because not only are you giving someone else value who's going to appreciate you for that, you're giving, you know, the receiver the information, and they're just going to be so impressed with the relationship and the value you gave them, expecting nothing. You better believe they're going to look to do business with you at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think that's true.
All right, well, it is 12 o'clock all, so to the dot, we are going to wrap up this Wednesday webinar. I appreciate all of you for being here and for being so gracious with my technical difficulties. Thank you to my panelists. We appreciate you so much. All of the content you shared was just awesome. I'm looking at the comments and so many people are just saying this is right on. They've all learned something new. So I encourage everyone in our audience to go take this information and put it to use. We will follow up with an email giving you a link to this recording, and we'll give you some suggestions on how to keep carrying this forward. So
I'm
have
sure
a happy
we'll
Wednesday.
see everybody at Coffee Connection tomorrow morning, right? Or
Yeah.
well, Friday morning.
There you
Friday
go.
morning. And tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we're having our virtual open house. So we'll hope to see you there as well.
Very good. Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
thanks
for the
to everybody for
opportunity, Emily.
joining. Thank you.
Thank you for all.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Emily.
Yes.
Take care,
Thank you,
guys.
Emily. Bye.
Bye.